Just want to share the thoughts that I will be sharing this morning by saying every year has its own vibe. Every Rosh Hashanah comes with its own spirit. And this year, with everything going on, it's a complicated vibe. And I want to introduce my thoughts this morning by sharing a little story. So you have to imagine that little Johnny is 7 years old, and he's getting ready for bed. He brushes his teeth, he gets his pajamas on, he's lying down in bed, and his mom is about to give him a good night hug. And Johnny turns to his mom and says, "Mommy, where do I come from?" And his mom has been expecting this. She's a little anxious, but she knows what it is that she's going to say. And she starts by saying, when a mommy and a daddy love each other very, very much. And she can see that Johnny looks a little bit confused. And Johnny says, "Look, this morning in school, my friend Sam told me that he comes from Brooklyn. Where do I come from?" One of the most important aspects of communication is that you have to understand what question you're being asked. You have to understand, especially when you're talking to a lot of people, where the people in the room are coming from. And obviously, I don't mean Brooklyn, though in this room, that might be where many of us come from. And I'm looking out and thinking, people are probably anxious. People are probably feeling despondent. People are probably feeling angry. People may be feeling a little bit of hope. People may be feeling, as my uncle Elimelech in Bat Yam would say, gamze, vegamze, vegamze, a little bit of everything. And so, what should I do? I wondered as I prepared for these moments. And I decided to lean into our tradition and specifically to allow the sounds of the shofar to carry me and to carry us forward into this new year. As we know, there are 4 different sounds that we make with the shofar. And the first one is tekiah. Tekiah is the sound of affirmation. Tekiah recognizes that God rules over the world and that we have an obligation to bring blessing into the world. Abraham was not told by God, people are going to hate you, and you need to be able to fight back. Though he will fight back when he needs to, he is told, start walking, v'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpechot ha'adama, and all of the families of the earth will be blessed through you. I have to remind us that the first sound takes us to a place of remembering that we are meant to affirm. We are meant to bring blessing into the world. And sometimes we are so apologetic about our tradition. I'm not sure I want someone to know. I'm not sure I want someone to see that we over-apologize it into non-existence. You know that Senator Joseph Lieberman died this year. And his stepson, Rabbi Ethan Tucker, a very brilliant scholar, was speaking about his stepfather, and he said that Senator Lieberman, may he rest in peace, wrote a book called The Gift of Shabbat, about how Shabbat brought meaning to his life. You know that he was an observant Jew. He was observant in Washington. He was observant at home in Connecticut. He was who he was, inside and outside. So he wrote this book about how beautiful Shabbat is, how it transforms our lives, how it gives us perspective. And he said that weeks afterward, he got word from the president of Notre Dame, who said to him, Senator Lieberman, I want you to know that after I read your book, I stopped emailing on Sunday, which is my Sabbath, because I wanted to be able to preserve a day that I could somehow transcend the give and take of everyday reality. And so Senator Lieberman understood that we're meant to bring blessing, not to force it. We're not looking to make people convert, though if somebody chooses to join the Jewish people, we welcome them wholeheartedly. But humbly and with an appropriate sense of what we bring, we affirm and we bring blessing into the world. We lead with affirmation. That's why tekiah is the first sound. But we can't ignore the next sound. The next sound is shevarim. And shevarim comes from the Hebrew word shever, lishbor, shavor, which means broken. There is so much in the world that is broken. Our people have experienced brokenness throughout our history, and certainly focusing on this last year, the brokenness seems to have no end. You may know that I joined a number of rabbis to travel to Israel in November, weeks after the October 7th massacres. We went to Kibbutz Kfar Aza, where a massacre occurred. We saw the homes, we saw the rubble, we saw the day-to-day reality that was completely turned upside down and in some instances literally incinerated. We went to a morgue where the bodies were brought post-October 7th. And the gentleman who was working there said, I'm here, I'm doing my holy work. My family asked if I need a mishaberach, and I said, no, I don't need it. Say it for the soldiers, say it for the other people, I don't need it. And then he thought again, and he said, mishaberach, it's refuat haguf, healing of the body, refuat nefesh, healing of the spirit. I'll take that. Based on what I'm seeing, I need healing of my spirit. And we went to Hostage Square, where vigil was taking place, and we spoke to Dr. Ayelet Levi Shachar, the mother of Naomi Levi, who was captured at age 19. And you can just take a moment, or a lot of moments, to think about what this 19-year-old and now 20-year-old girl is still enduring. God willing, if she's still alive. And I looked at this mom who said, I want nothing more than to have my daughter walk through my front door and tell me all of the things that I did wrong, just like she used to do. And her face looked shavur. She looked utterly broken. And I took a photo, not because I wanted to intrude on her in this way, but because I felt like I needed to capture this. Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, murdered weeks ago with 5 other hostages. He was an idealistic young man. He advocated for Jews and Arabs to live in peace. And he was an ardent soccer fan, and he would wrap himself in the banner of his home team, Hapoel Yerushalayim, and he would lead everyone who was present in cheers. And one of the team cheers goes like this, saying to the team, Shibart li et halev, otach ani ohev. You broke my heart. I love you, my dear team. And following Hirsch's murder, his fellow fans sang the same team cheer addressed to him, Shibart li et halev. You broke my heart, dear Hirsch. Otcha ani ohev. I love you, dear Hirsch. So much has been broken. So much has been broken in Israel. Relationships with people that we thought were allies have been broken. A sense of security that Israeli Jews and American Jews have to some degree has been broken. Lives in Gaza have been broken, some of them innocent lives. In a recent speech, Hirsch's father, Jonathan, said the following: there is a surplus of agony on all sides of this tragic conflict in the Middle East. In a competition of pain, there are no winners. Shivarim, brokenness. The second sound of the shofar. And what comes next? Trua. Trua is an alarm. It's a battle cry. Growing up in New Jersey in the 70s and 80s, I experienced very little anti-Semitism, and maybe it was a golden age for us. And when I became a rabbi, we said to each other, we're not going to talk about anti-Semitism. We're going to stress the beauty, the positive aspects of being Jewish. We're not going to be Jewish and have to deal with the people who hate us. And we said, to be cute, we're going to bring more joy and less oi to the Jewish people. But now, recently, we are alarmed. We are alarmed by growing anti-Semitism that comes from the right and from the left, and we have to be honest, whatever our own ideological inclination, to be able to call it out wherever it's coming from. And it rears its ugly head in Charlottesville, and in Pittsburgh, and in Poway, and in New York City, and at Harvard, and Columbia, and USC, and I can go on and on and on. Israel is fighting on multiple fronts. And we here in the United States, and our children and grandchildren, and those college students who are here are fighting on that front. You cannot just bring blessing into the world delightfully when indeed there are people who want to destroy you. I met with our high school seniors several times, and we talked about the challenges that they would be facing on campus. And then Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of the ADL, member of our congregation, was gracious enough to agree to join with me and our college students on Zoom, and they spoke about what's going on, and it's not good. And it is not okay that the rights of Jewish students to learn peacefully, to exist peacefully, are not being supported and defended. Trua, the alarm has been sounded. We have to do battle against our enemies. Israel is doing battle against Hamas and Hezbollah, and their list goes on, and they are the enemies not just of Israel, they are the enemies of democracy, the enemies of civilization. People who don't understand that have their heads in the sand, or worse. But we don't want to have to fight forever. And so I want to devote the rest of my comments to the final sound, which is Tekiyah Gedolah, the great affirming sound that points toward the ultimate redemption. So the prophet Isaiah, they don't write like him anymore, wrote about beautifully, articulately, what would happen in his vision of the end of days. V'haya bayom hahu yitaka b'shofar gadol uva'u ha'ovdim be'eretz Ashur v'hanidachim me'eretz Mitzrayim v'yishtachavu l'Adonai b'har hakodesh b'Yerushalayim. In that day, the great shofar will sound, and those who are stuck in Assyria and stuck in Egypt, my translation, and all the others who are stuck wherever they are will come to Jerusalem onto the Holy Mount. So Isaiah understood that the ultimate goal was for people to come together. The ultimate goal was for all humanity to enjoy peace and security and freedom. We get there by affirming our mission to bring blessing to the world, Tekiyah. We get there by acknowledging the brokenness that exists within us and with other people, Shivarim. We get there by fighting back against the people who are doing the breaking, which is Trua. Because ultimately, Tekiyah, Shvarim, Trua leads to Tekiyah Gedolah. Weeks after Jonathan Poland gave the speech that I referred to, he had to give another speech, the eulogy of his son. And in it, he said the following: Hirsch, we failed you. We all failed you. But you would not have failed you You would have pushed harder for justice. You would have worked to understand the other, to bridge differences. You would have challenged more people to challenge their own thinking. And what you would be pushing for now is to assure that your death and the deaths of all the soldiers and so many innocent civilians are not in vain. And your starting point would be the release of the hostages. Now, usually when somebody dies, we say, Yehi zichro baruch, may their memory be for a blessing. But Hirsch's friend said something else. They said, Yehi zichro mahapecha. May his memory be for a revolution. The Hebrew word for revolution comes from hafuch. Things should be turned upside down. And therefore, Tikiyah Gedolah, the long sound of the shofar, inspires us to turn things upside down so that curiosity triumphs over condemnation, decency over cruelty, and ultimately goodness over evil. I want to share one more quick insight before I conclude. When I served as the rabbi in West Hempstead for 7 years, 7 beautiful years, I got to know a lot of people who were older than me because I was in my 20s when I got there, and most people were older than me. And one individual was a survivor of the Shoah. He survived 11 concentration camps. And he was a brilliant man. He was an intellectual, and maybe under different circumstances, he would have become a college professor, and he loved to teach. And he devoted hours to teaching young children, Jewish children, children of all faiths, about the Shoah and about its implications. His name was Norbert. He passed on a few years ago. And once I, as a Jewish educator, said to him, I said, Norbert, take a moment and think and tell me, what do you think is the most important lesson that you want to impart to Jewish children? He didn't have to think. He said, Simcha shel mitzvah, which means the joy that comes from doing a mitzvah. He said, that's what I want Jewish children to see as the most important thing that they need to know. He taught, of course, about the dangers of hatred. He taught, of course, about the need to fight back. He taught, of course, about the need to protect people. But this man who witnessed the most cruelty imaginable said, I want the next generation to know the joy that comes from doing a mitzvah, from doing the right thing in the world. That's what he wanted. So I'm going to end with Johnny, whom you may recall asked, where do I come from? And I'm going to ask all of us to think about and to tap into, where do we come from? And the answer is, we are the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We recognize our pain and the pain of other people. We fight back when we need to, and through us, and through our families, all of the families of the earth shall be blessed. Let us never forget that. Our haters don't get to define us. We define ourselves. We bring blessing to the world. Let it continue. Amen.